It was a stressful morning after finding out a boa constrictor snuck into the camp and ate one of the guy's pets, with another one missing. They caught the 6-foot snake and hung it in a bag on the wall just beside the breakfast tables. Poisonous snakes, horse tours, addicts in the jungle. I thought to myself, this isn't the craziest place I've been to, but this is definitely the craziest trip I've been on. When I heard about this woman who traded in baby monkeys for homeless addicts, I had to find out more. You heard right. Baby monkeys, homeless addicts, and a former millionaire working with the top drug dealer in all of Coco Beach? What is going on? Before this, I've only ever heard of Costa Rica being a place to retire. Not just for old people, but young people too. If you work online, why not do it under a palm tree next to a tropical ocean while drinking iced mochaccino? And pay 0% income tax. Sounds good to me. After doing some more digging, I also found out that Costa Rica is a blue zone, meaning because of the mountainous air, the fresh water, the organic food, it's one of the healthiest places in the world to live, with the highest amount of people per capita thriving over 100 years old. Having worked in a lot of Latin American countries and seeing how dangerous they can be, I was floored to hear this part. There's no cartel. Sure, there's some crime like any place, but the small city I live in Canada, is 2 times more dangerous than all of Costa Rica. It's so safe, the country doesn't even need a military. But as you heard at the beginning, even in a tropical paradise, there are snakes hidden in the jungle, waiting to strike. And sometimes, they win. My name is Brian James, and when I hear of cool places that are changing lives, I check it out and I tell you about it. And this is my next story. In the northwest corner of Costa Rica, located near the black sands of Coco Beach, hidden in the jungle between 2 mountains, lay a place where addicts fight the serpents of their shadows. Meet Vicky Conley, CEO of the Monkey Farm. Born and raised in California, former entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Vicky started off in the dog grooming and coaching business and built hers into being the largest of its kind in the entire world. After having optimized everything to the point she could run her business from only her laptop, she enjoyed life and traveled the world. I mean, why not? While running her business from cruise ships, resorts, and hotspots, out of all these places, she fell in love with Costa Rica, sold everything, and moved to the jungles. Now, I like traveling. I enjoy adventures in beautiful places, a little dangerous sometimes. But I've never been to a jungle before. I didn't know what to expect. Well, Vicky told me exactly what to expect. Rain. Tropical, non-stop rain. With earth-trembling thunderclaps included. 'Tis the season, but that was just the beginning. We came with a small team from Pine Falls, Canada. Their purpose was to volunteer at the farm and help the base in any way needed, which lots of travelers do. My purpose was to see what happens to addicts who fall through the system into the arms of a program that claims it can help, or to find out if they just get exploited by greed and abuse, only to wind up back on the streets like they do in other programs around the country. And of course, as with every trip, we got more than we bargained for. Like at any farm, the day starts early, 4:30 a.m. to be painfully exact, and in this case, during a tropical storm. But my adventure started the night before. I don't know what it is about the first night in a new country, but it always seems to come as a test. I got to my room, which is kinda like a sea can on stilts, and first discovered one of my windows wouldn't fully shut. Is this the trip I get malaria? Dengue? Chikungunya? Again? I also had a random light issue while unpacking and almost suffered a seizure. Finally, morning came, and it came slowly. I actually don't recall sleeping. It was more like waiting. With the torrential rain on my tin roof, sounding like a marching band, and the jungle heat saran wrapping me in my bedsheet as if I was a soggy ham sandwich, I didn't sleep much. Nonetheless, I had to get the girls from their rental and back to the base in time to start chores with the guys. 4:30 a.m. was tough, but the girls were having a great time. One even got excited enough to jump into the pig pen. Well, turns out that was an accident. Next was breakfast and Bible study. Then tasks were handed out for the day. We learned one of the key features about restoration from addiction is regimentation. Everything must be well-structured, disciplined, with little flexibility. This is to reverse the years of impulsive living that addiction forces you into. At first it appears as if you have control, but eventually you find yourself in a trap at the mercy of whatever your addiction demands of you. Time is lost, and eventually, so is everything else. Meet Mauricio. He was a professional trumpet player and musician, quite famous in town too. And because of a bad cut on his lip, he couldn't play. This was his job. He had to do something. So a friend of his told him to rub cocaine on it, make it go numb. And it worked. He could play. He didn't get high per se. He didn't crave it. He could use it when he wanted, and it was never a problem. He was in control. Until 20 years later, waking up one day, realizing he couldn't remember the last time he ate. He was using every day, multiple times a day. He was 50 pounds lighter than originally. His wife left him years ago, and he was working simply to buy drugs. He was in control until he wasn't. If these guys were ever going to get their lives back, they needed to learn how to follow a structure.
I guess, creating systems that they can follow and it's easier for them to follow, and something that it shows them that, we have them to help them out. And the thing that we're trying to do here is to help them out. They're take it a lot easier because they're coming from trauma. They're coming from places where they don't want to listen to authority. They don't want to listen to people to tell them what to do and how to do things. I think just be able to just transfer that into something that they see is beneficial for them, something that just comes out of care, out of love. That we're trying to do that because it's something that if you actually change your life to do those things and take those things as something that's part of you, it's going to help them. It's going to create something different in you. It's going to give you, a different outlook on responsibilities, on, the things that life is going to throw at you.
After some painting duty, we had free time during the therapy classes. So I took the girls back to their rental. They might swim a bit, and I could get back to making the documentary before returning for evening chores. And that's when 4 a.m. took its full effect and did something I'll never, ever forget. Yep, destroyed the car.
But yeah, so this is gonna go back here. So it's not that up. We see drama, right?
Yeah.
But look, this is perfect. We can put back. Look, I was a little bit broken at the bottom, but
I didn't realize what I had done until the whiplash of the accident snapped me back to reality. I don't even really know what to say about that. I have not a clue, no words whatsoever. Is it just bad luck, not carelessness? I have no idea. I don't know. I have no words in my brain right now. How could this happen? Where was my brain? And really, not even one full day into the trip? Luckily for me, a very nice drunk lady offered her mechanic friend who had a shop somewhere in a hidden alley not too far from here who could fix it cheap without the rental company knowing. Okay. Not. And her equally drunk and very nice, one-legged tattooed boyfriend was also cheery about what happened. He too got in an accident earlier that morning and was fine about it. I mean, why not? He was still drunk from breakfast. I, on the other hand, was sober and wasn't feeling very good about any of this. Not all was lost. I was fully covered with insurance, but now I had the complicated headache of getting in an accident in a foreign country with a third-party insurance company. Ever been there? I spent the next 3 hours on the phone with insurance people, the rental company, and everyone else who needed to hear about this. I was so embarrassed. Needless to say, filming wasn't going to happen the rest of the day, as I had to exchange the vehicle with another at the rental place an hour away, during 3 hours of rush hour. Both ways. It was real late, and when everything was said and done, honestly, I had a bad attitude. Wouldn't anyone in my shoes? But on my way back, I stopped to think about things a little deeper, and all of a sudden, things didn't appear so bad after all. As the late Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. To put things into perspective, I only destroyed a brake light and bent the trunk door. Something money can fix. But I was now surrounded by men who destroyed their lives and bent their identities. What does it take to fix that? Well, that's a good question. These guys are here. This is what they want. How exactly does the monkey farm help them?
When we first started out and I realized this is going to be a thing here, I wanted to do it right. So I researched what's the most successful statistically program in the world and found out that it was Teen Challenge. And I copied everything we could do from the schedule during the day, the phases. It's 13 months long. It's faith-based. God is in everything.
In a day-to-day basis, I do counseling with the guys, sit and try to talk to 2 guys, in the mornings. Try to just see if anybody's having problems, something that they're dealing with emotionally, something that they're dealing with the program.
While they're here, we're always working on building a resume for them, or CV. So we add the skills, and English will be one of those. And we create the actual resume for them, the CV. We send these CVs out to people we know, business owners and people we know, and find them a job.
I get to set up any appointments, if they need to go to Yafa. Yafa is the place that they go to get either, they get medical attention. They go once a month, they get medical. They get to see a doctor, social worker, and a psychologist.
So when David told me about this really great program, I thought, we have the best there is. It can't get any better. Statistically, Teen Challenge is the best. They're using Celebrate Recovery. But sure, send me the videos. So he started sending me several videos, and I watched them. I was like, wow, this is really deep and really impressive. And it was so much deeper than we were doing with the Celebrate Recovery. I realized there's definitely something to this. We took the course, made it through it. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. The first after probably the second day, I thought I was taking this course so I would learn how to help them. And I very quickly realized I need help. I'm a complete mess, and I had no idea that I'm an emotional mess. It was amazing. Anyway, it was really hard.
Tim Fletcher, therapist of 30 years and leading authority in complex trauma therapy, says complex trauma affects 70% of the world's population, though it's likely even higher than that. That means the chances of even you having it are 7 out of 10. When I first heard that, I said to myself, I don't have trauma. I've never been injured or assaulted. I'm not addicted to drugs. But when I heard the definition of complex trauma and saw examples of it hidden in plain sight, it actually shocked me and made me rethink. Maybe I'm not so unscathed after all. Complex trauma is more about what doesn't happen to you than it is a traumatic event. You have 12 human needs, and if any 2 of those needs are not being met on a consistent basis, it puts your brain into survival mode, whether you're aware of it or not. There's the obvious needs like food and shelter, and then there's ones just as critical but less visible, like the need for validation, the need for justice, the need for love and respect. Things all these guys were lacking growing up. And when a child feels something integral is missing, they live in a sense of danger, always in survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. When they get their first drink or drug or release that instantly takes away the pain and fear at the push of a button, the relief is overwhelming and they've found their new savior. 97% of all addicts have complex trauma, and we've now learned that addiction is not the disease, it's a symptom of the disease. If you break the word down, you can see how we might all be affected. Dis-ease. How stressed are you? On the outside, these men seemed like regular guys, really, all fantastic people. One was a telecommunications specialist, another an electrician, another came from corporate management. Some had kids, most had wives. If one didn't know better, you'd think you were talking with a neighbor from a peaceful community. Yet hearing their stories, we realized each one of them recently came from a horrendous abyss of addiction and chaos. From drug dealing in luxury hotels, gang initiation by murder and attempted suicide, to crashing through windows, being drugged by corrupt police, and waking up in a prison cell covered in blood. They had lots to share. But they didn't start there. It started with an absent and perfectionistic father, cold, unloving, and impossible to impress. It started with a narcissistic mother, abusive and manipulative for her gain only. Maybe violence, maybe neglect. Fundamentally, it started with not feeling safe, growing up without the right tools to process and recognize that the people who were supposed to take care of them were not there, or not doing a good job. This formed within them a shame-based identity. In a child's mind, if something is wrong, it must be their fault. And if it's their fault, something must be wrong with them. Classic shame. They did what they needed to survive, and being a child, they didn't know the path they were taking was only a trap. It doesn't excuse what they did as adults, but it helps understand why it happened. Now they're here, in the valley of the shadow of death, in a jungle between two mountains. On the one, extreme poverty and struggle, representing the world they came from. On the other, luxurious mansions overlooking paradise, representing a world with freedom. And the jungle in between, being the wild and savage world we all live in. Two literal mountains with two literal realities, and very symbolic of the road we are all on. The next question is, how does one get from one mountain to the other? Unfortunately, in Costa Rica, most addiction recovery programs only exploit these people. Guised under Christian names, making it sound like a center of hope, these men enter the programs only to wind up in another hell.
We were at our dinner for the homeless one night, and two of the men that now I had known them for years, they asked for help to get out of their addiction and their homeless lifestyle. And at that point, all I knew about that was do not take them to one of these so-called addiction recovery centers that are free, because they were all scams that were exploiting them. And I know this because my Canadian missionary friend actually taught me if somebody asked for help, take them to one of these places. And he took me there, introduced me to the people. And so when somebody asked for help, I would take them there. But the next week I would see them back, or 2 weeks later, I'd see them back. And I'd say, what happened? And they said they didn't help me. They weren't helping anybody at all.
They have a way to make you feel like you are in a good place, you know. But what they do is just give you a bed and give you some food, you know. And actually, for example, when you leave, you have to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, and you just get a breakfast, and you have to leave, you know. So you go to do sales. They give you to a basket with the 50,000 or 70,000 colones in things, you know. So at the end, they make a 300% of sales, and they give you only the 30% to you, and you already make that.
They were just using us to make money. They would send us out in the streets with a box full of trinkets that we had to sell $40 worth a day, plus buy our own food. And if we didn't make the quota of $40 a day, we would lose our bed. And they did nothing to help us.
They don't give you any lessons. They don't give you any therapies, any medicine. For example, you need to go to the doctor or the hospital for something. It's really hard because they want you to do sales. You don't have free days. You're always there. And most of the time you even eat because you are in the street doing sales. So you have to asking for food and everything. So for them, the cost is less. You're not in home. You didn't spend water. You didn't spend food. You didn't spend anything. You are outside. Actually, you bring money for them.
I even heard stories of the owners being addicted to drugs and using the money to buy drugs in the office. They all have Christian names, and that just still makes me really mad. So they were just exploiting them. So by this,
Some of these guys were tricked into these programs before coming to the monkey farm. There's no rehab provided. Sometimes they're even given drugs, and the message is clear. There is no hope. Until there is. Behold, the monkey farm, aka the farm of hope. Life is simple at the farm of hope. Not necessarily easy, but clean, honest. It's free for all who enroll. They get food, shelter, and as long as they participate in the rehabilitation process and follow the community rules, they can stay and heal for the whole 13 months, expense-free, potentially leaving with a completed resume and a job back in society. And they don't have to sell pencils. The morning consists of caring for the animals, teaching them to mind the life and needs of something else other than their own. Then, there's daily, in-depth therapy classes developed by Tim Fletcher Co., diving deep into recognizing the damage that was done and how it led them down dark paths in order to survive, and equipping them with powerful tools to break free from all of that, to live honorably, to return to their families and become assets to society, not selfishly and dangerously at the mercy of survival instincts and addiction like before. And their most favorite item, the one that brings immense healing as well as what predominantly funds the base? Horse tours. Many become emotionally tied to these horses as they learn to break, train, and work together. Something about the gentle beasts that help them find their own humanity again. And it's a world-class experience for tourists. The guys bond with the animals, gain admin and customer service skills, and the tourists are able to experience something memorable with their family that's also changing lives. Many of whom choose to support the base with monthly donations afterward, a goal the base desperately works to build, as horse tours are often not enough to cover their financial needs. It all seemed magical, hopeful, exciting, and witnessing this was well and beautiful. And that's when I had my second accident of the trip. No, not another car. My drone flew it blind straight into the trees on the side of the mountain. Thinking back on it, I really needed coffee. That was an adventure I wasn't really that interested in having. I was flying my drone, went too fast sideways, and then it went straight down into the jungle. We're talking fire ants, like this whole hill is like fire ants, poisonous snakes in the trees. I'm watching, like, every vine is looking like something that's gonna bite my neck. And thankfully, I was climbing down a cliff of soft dirt. Thankfully, all the vines actually kept me up, like 100 seatbelts. But man, was that difficult climbing through while not trying to fall to imminent death. I don't know how far down that thing goes, but here's where I got in and got out. Right down in there. What a view though, eh? Just don't go down there. Don't go down there. That's where nightmares are. As the trip was winding down, it became clear to me that anyone going to Costa Rica needed to hear about this project, especially if you were looking for something fun and impactful to do with your family. If you're only visiting, to book a horse tour and help fund what they're doing. Maybe sponsor them monthly. If you want a vacation with a purpose, to volunteer at the monkey farm. But not only that, because maybe you're watching this and you might not ever visit Costa Rica, but you know how these guys feel. To also know that with all the craziness in the world, all the uncertainty ahead, perhaps you have some of your own struggles. To know that no matter how far one sinks into darkness or addiction, there is always hope to get out. As someone once said, no matter how dirty your past is, your future is spotless. It was bittersweet to say goodbye to these guys after doing life with them, even if it was only a week. We bonded in a way much deeper than one might on a regular vacation. But it was time to go home, to our families, out of the rain, back to what's familiar, back to instant coffee. The girls had tears, and the guys swore to keep in touch when they got out, all promising to finish the program. And one encouraging word I was able to leave with them that I heard someone else preach once. A Bible story about a boy versus a murderous giant, a fight over freedom. A story that applies to all of us. How with the help of God, the boy slew the giant and used its own sword to cut off its head. Meaning, how the weapon the enemy intended to destroy the boy with was the exact weapon the boy used to destroy the enemy with and bring freedom to his people. And the same is true with these men, that the weapon of addiction the enemy intended to destroy them with would one day be used to defeat evil and bring freedom to many others. How? By sharing of the victory they found, leading many others in the same battle to the same freedom, hidden in the jungle between two mountains at the monkey farm.